Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bobby Marlab. I'm the co-founder of Mental Walks with Adina Jacobs. Before we start today, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and to pay our deepest respects to elders past, present and emerging in whatever land that you're coming to us from today. It is an enormous pleasure to be bringing you this iconic monthly conversation series on the fantastic topic of everyday sexism. And it's also my pleasure to welcome back Amanda Gome, who's a treasured mentor for us in Melbourne, but who's had an esteemed career in media, in journalism, and now as the head of Notable Media, where she is training CEOs and senior women and men to build their influence through communications. We had the pleasure of Amanda presenting to us a year ago on the topic of visible me. And to that, she brought enormous insight that comes from a career that spans roles as head of digital and social at the ANZ Bank, as a journalist for BRW, a publisher of private media and CEO of private media. She's behind the launch of titles like Smart Company, Women's Agenda, which I read avidly, and has a number of other credits to her name. So we are delighted to her that she's bringing us this topic of everyday sexism today. The way the session will run is that we'll be doing a short poll at the beginning of the session and also another one at the end. And we just ask that you bear with us for the results on that and become clear why we're doing that. And also we encourage you to put your questions in chat throughout the conversation today. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Amanda, and over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, Jackie, for saying I love that cartoon. I just want to point out, it is a very stereotypical cartoon of the male and female, and which we will be talking about today. But I'd also like to acknowledge the wonderful era that we're in, where we are exploring gender stereotypes, and that we are, addressing gender in so many ways. Because really that's what's so exciting about this era. But to start off, what's happened is the communications landscape has changed. And to set the scene, social and digital media has transformed communications. Now, traditionally, we always thought 30 to 40% of job descriptions is about leadership communications and professional visibility at the top. But now, because of social media, we're expecting people at younger levels of organisations or more junior levels to have leadership communication skills. And this means, of course, that we've all got to be more professionally visible earlier on. So we can start by building this great profile, building visibility and influence in our professional networks, being visible in industry and in media, and of course internally. So that's kind of what I do and what I've been doing for quite a long time. But when I would go out and talk to women about building their visibility, they'd say to me a lot of things like, I don't know what to say, I might get into trouble, all of that. But there'd be another thing that they'd say too, which is, well, I tried, but I got told this. And when they did that, they'd always clasp their heart like this. They'd go, I got told this. And so I shut up. I pulled back. I got quiet, right? And so I began to add to what I was training people on, not only building profile, activity, confidence, skills and resilience, but also understanding the big killer of visibility confidence, which is everyday sexism. And this is why this is of such great interest on Mentor Walks is, of course, a number of you, when I'm walking with you, you actually raise it. And I say, well, I'm delighted to tell you this has nothing to do with you. That was just plain old everyday sexism, right? So, and that was, for many of them, a kind of light bulb going off. And why it's so important is from working with senior executives for so long as a business journalist, but also training, visibility leadership is the one thing that, you know, you see leaders, female leaders, and they're so confident, but that visibility confidence seems to be one of the things that's holding people back. And of course, we have so far to go. This is just the recent Chief Executive Women Senior Executive Census, which shows that we're actually going backwards on some of these things. The other reason to tackle this early on is it takes practice to build these skills. And often women get appointed to something where they're needed and they haven't been building these skills up. And as Antonia Watson says, you know, CEO of ANZ New Zealand, when you get promoted, you suddenly need these skills. And I wished I'd learnt them earlier. And that includes understanding what everyday sexism is. So why have we got it? And I think it's this. I think we're still not used to seeing women in leadership. And so when we see them, we project all these assumptions on what they should say, look like, and act. And can I say too, everyday sexism can be by women and men to women and men. It's not only women that this is impacting, it's also men. And as Sam Mossman said in The Age, who's also head of Chief Executive Women, the premier female leadership group, the word risk is used about appointing women to senior roles because when you get a highly gendered set of criteria about what leadership looks like, when someone who turns up and challenges that, it's easy to say they're a risk or they're something, you know, which we'll look at in a minute. So we're going to get into it now, what it is, but where do we see it? We see it everywhere. I see it in media, the workplace, industry, culture, systems, policies, and in the home, right? I'll have someone say, look, I just got told by my husband, I'm this, or I'm too overexposed, I've got too much profile. And while often it can be said sometimes out of a protection, a woman might say to you, you know, pull back a bit because you're too overexposed, and maybe she means it in a protective way. But often it's literally said to shut us up. It's said to knock us out of the race. It's said to leave the field free for competitors. And of course, is wonderful Donald Trump saying to Hillary Clinton, do you know the word shrill? She can be kind of shrill. He worked very hard on making her go away. So why, as leaders, and all of us can be leaders in this, why should we care? It actually stops us progressing and it causes us to drop out. It can be one comment and it can stop us, literally. We know it causes, it's all from research, a huge toll on employee self-esteem, personal relationships, and general health. It encourages ridiculous stereotypes for men as well, right? It's against companies' policies. It stops diversity of voices, and people hate it. Men and women are very uncomfortable when they see it and hear it, but often they just don't know, what was it? Why is it? What should I have said? So these are the 6 examples that we're going to go through. And this is based on Male Champions of Change research that was done by Elizabeth Broderick. It hasn't, it pretty much encapsulates all the examples that I've seen over the many years and still see today. So I think it's a pretty good list there. And just judging from the poll, that we're pretty even in what we've seen. So that's quite interesting. If you have an example of the everyday, one of the 6 that we're describing at that time, please indicate in chat. And also, if you have a great response to that, please indicate in chat. And we're going to try and have a little bit of a conversation as we go. So I'll be watching chat and I can call you out, and Bobby's going to be my second set of eyes on that, so that we can hear your examples and also your great suggestions as to what to do. So our first example here is this. She's too, right? It's the gender labels. She's too shrill. Oh, she's too bossy. Oh, she wouldn't be suitable. She's too passionate. She's too hysterical. She's too loud. She's too emotional. She's too boastful, too unpredictable, too irrational, too ambitious. I've heard all of them, too, right? So when you hear that word too, they're saying, therefore, she's not suitable, okay? And again, if you imagine that, that's because, well, this is what my idea of leadership is like. So this doesn't suit it. The other one there I hear is over, right? The gender label. She's oversharing. She's over ambitious. She's over the top. She's over profiled. She's overexposed, right? Lots of overs there. And this was a great example where a woman said to me, my colleague told me I overshared and I thought it would be better if I just went quiet, and deep down, I thought he might be right. And I said to her, so where is your colleague now? And she said, oh, he's way up. I don't even see him anymore. He's been promoted way up the ranks. And she hadn't moved. And when she looked down at that one comment and the impact that it had on her, and then the number of opportunities that she turned down because of that one comment, she was quite, she had a lot of thinking to do at the end. The other one, this was just last week. Well, okay, so he said, I just got told I was overambitious, right? And initially I felt stupid and wondered why I even thought I could have that conversation. Interestingly enough, because I'd been doing some training with her, she said, then I remembered, and I hadn't actually done this training with her, I'd simply said we were going to do it. She said, I suddenly went, hang on, this isn't me. This is it. So part of understanding this is it's protection, right? You're protecting yourself from it. So even if you don't have a direct experience of it, when you see it, you'll go, oh, everyday sexism, and you'll have your armor out and you won't go like that. Amy, you've been told you're too talkative and too emotional. The most recent being is that I'm overthinking things, right? So this is an interesting area for you to, this is what we get to where we think, well, is this feedback I can take on? Or is this plain everyday sexism that, you know, I'm a person in the workplace and they're not used to seeing somebody like that. So that they're the two things that you kind of can work through. But overthinking, there you go again, you know. And one of the great things that we're seeing in the workplace now is as we get more women in leadership, because all women love to be authentic leaders, they are actually bringing their authenticity to leadership. And so I think we're starting to get used to different types of people in leadership. The other one, just before we finish on this one, is you have too much profile, and you hear this a lot. You're spending too much time on your profile. How do we know you're going to do the job properly, right? Now, you know, no man, I'm sorry, but no man has ever been told that ever. I watched men do amazing things for their companies by building great profiles through all my time as a journalist. Bobby, you see it too. By building a great profile and being out there on the issues that matter to your company, engaging with staff, engaging with customers, huge benefits to your organization. So anyone else? Oh, we've got Jackie saying, I've been told I'm not black or white enough. I have to ask in return if I'm 50 shades of grey. You've already got your answer, Jackie. Yeah, that too. Not enough. It's very interesting. And that's a great one. Crazy. That's a really good one. Thank you, Belinda. So crazy. I should add that because that's often used against women. You know, she's crazy. Yeah, you know, that stepped your way to the top. Another one. You know, she's too what? I don't know, loose with that. And look at these examples coming in. I've had a sexism for another female referring to me as too fancy. Right. Yeah. So as we said, it can come from both ways. Samantha, you organised a cheese and wine event for staff and was told that the crackers would taste better if I put cheese on the person's cracker. Oh, God. Oh, it's laughed off as a joke. Right. Yes, well, we're getting to insults as a joke in a minute. Okay, so sticking to the gender stereotypes, these are possible replies that we can give. And my favourite's that bottom one. Look, we're still getting used to women's voices in leadership, so that may be why you're noticing this, but let's focus on her expertise, right? Let's listen to what she's saying, right? Rather than she's too loud or too that. And often when you do that, the person immediately responds to that and goes, oh, okay, sure, you know, good point, right? Has anybody else got a good response to any of the she's too or she's over? Just pop it in chat. The second one we're looking at, which you'll all be aware of, is devaluing women's expertise and views, right? So it's when many women experience men interrupting or talking over them. I've had a number of the mentees saying they can't get a word in. They walk into, particularly in some industries, they'll walk into a room and they can't get their voices heard, right? Their voices are not listened to or supported, or of course they're mansplained. Who can forget this wonderful ad from Adelaide University, which caused great hilarity, particularly with us all on social. So mansplaining, it means that, Karen Kim, oh, Karen says, in my Asian community, I'm always told I'm too Australian or aggressive. That's just classic everyday sexism, Karen. And do type in if you've got a good reply for us. So placing value on women's views. Make sure you've got an equal share of voice at meetings that you lead or attend. Make sure at the close of a meeting, everybody's had a turn. This is as a leader. Make sure that you contribute, you know, beyond seniority, that we go down, that you're getting the voices of everybody in the room, and ask where are the women. I'm hoping Carol Schwartz could join us today, who started the panel pledge. Carol Schwartz is an esteemed board director and a Reserve Bank member. And she started the panel pledge to get organisations to pledge that they would have equal representation on panels. And it had a very big impact. So some of the things you can say in response are, thanks, you've had your turn. It's her turn now. It's my turn. It's their turn to speak. So that we make sure that we've got that. The other thing that I do, particularly, and I shared this with the mentees on the walk, one of the great things to do when you're in a boardroom and you can't get your voice heard is to literally make sure you use your body, lean in, thump the table, point to the man and say, or the woman, and say, great idea. Can I just say or add? And the person will immediately be so stunned and think, what did I just say? Right? And there's you're in. They've shut up, right? And you're in the conversation. Dice Gander just shared with us last week at a speech, one of the things she does is she words someone up before a meeting and says, you know, I'm coming to this meeting with this idea, and that person will then throw to her and introduce her, which is a great way of spotlighting her. Always sit in the middle of a room. And then invite other women to sit around you. Stand up to do a talk and use your body to take up space. Constantly unwind yourself and make sure you're leaning, gesturing, using your body, right? Don't sit in a corner and be small. All of those influencing tactics can really help you. Make sure you've got great profiles. This is particularly important on LinkedIn, that speak to your experience, your expertise, your authority, your values, and your passion. Bobby's is a great example, so you can all go and check Bobby's after this. So what, Karen, you're saying you're in career, you're a generation behind. Oh. Right, how do we get the whole of career to do this? Place value on all views. So champion women out, call out their achievements, right? And increasingly, we're seeing men in organisations get so much better at this. So they're becoming sponsors of women and looking for opportunities for them. And they're also really making sure that women are called out for their expertise. It's almost the reverse of them talking over them. They're actually highlighting them, calling them out. And thanks, Tina. When you get a true response, the responses work for me. That responses work for you. And when I look at our leadership, it's what's missing. Yeah. Okay, insult is a joke. So this is what we were referring to before. And this apparently is the most frequently encountered everyday sexism experienced by men and women, right? And it consists of sexist jokes or remarks and terms based on gender. And they're put downs. And they're really difficult to deal with because everybody's kind of either laughing or kind of going, and they don't know what to say because he's a good bloke and, oh, you know, she's means it in a good way kind of thing, right? So it's quite difficult to deal with, but you know, it's the blonde jokes. It's, you know, he runs like a girl, who wears the pants, all of those kind of things that we've all seen. Really good to call it out simply with a, what do you mean by that? Right? What do you mean by that? I had an experience where I was doing a capital raising for my company, and I had 12 investors coming, and we were doing a little practice run. And the person that was putting all of this together and had invited these important people in said, "Now I'm going to introduce you as the not dumb blonde CEO, Amanda Gome." And I said, "But Barry, why would you do that?" And he said, "Oh, no, because it'll make a joke. It'll relax everyone." And I said, "It won't relax them, Barry, because what's going to happen is I'm going to turn to you and say, Barry, why are you introducing me that way?" He went very upset at that. And he said, "Well, how do you want me to introduce you?" I said, "As the CEO, Amanda Gome." He went, "Oh." Anyway, you know, that can happen in all sorts of situations. And we don't want to validate it by laughing, saying silent, or kind of palming it off. And if we miss the moment to call it out, you can go back afterwards and say, "Look, I was reflecting on that joke. You know, it was kind of an insult masquerading as a joke, and it really impacted that person, or it made me feel like this." And you can remind someone that it actually wasn't funny. And it actually is a great example of everyday sexism. And you can refer them to the Male Champions of Change and the report Setting the Tone, which is found online. And this was another great example where a man responded to someone saying, surely they arranged her for the boss. And this man saw it as an opportunity to educate and lead and said, "The impression you're making there is not okay." And they then took it as an opportunity to do some training of the firm, which can be very beneficial. Asking someone to explain their sexist joke is the best tactic. Yeah, it is, Mia. I think it's just saying, what do you mean by that? And it actually makes them reflect, because, you know, often they're trying to be funny and they haven't actually put it together that they're insulting somebody through that attempt. So our number 4 is preoccupation with physical appearance. Now, the higher we go in the leadership ranks, the worse this gets. And this is comments about body shape, size, physical appearance, how we're dressing. And look, we know men and women do this. And Julia Gillard was the classic example. I mean, you know, we'll all look back now for, I think, with Julia Gillard, and Bobby, you might want to pop in here, and you think, why did we do more there? But you know, I don't know if you all remember the earlobes. For some reason, Australians became obsessed with her earlobes. You know, it was terrible. So as women become more prominent and visible, the worse this gets. I just wanted to go to Amy, or to go to Karen there, and Karen makes the point that my family says I'm the worst, right? When I do something well, it's like, well, Karen's just like a man. Yeah. And Amy, I'm interested in this. You say the person says that if you call a comment out as everyday sexism and the person says it's not, what do you say next? This is a challenge I'm up against, constant everyday sexism, when I'm jokingly called out. Amy, do you want to just pop off mute and tell us about that?
Oh gosh, yes. I work in a very male-dominated workplace in the construction sector. So I receive this a lot of the time, given that I'm the only female manager. And somebody will say something, for example, the managing director told me in front of a group of people in a meeting that I speak too much. And, you know, I jokingly, very embarrassed, say, oh, laugh it off and say, oh, I don't think, you know, that's right. Or, oh, would you say that to a man? And then I get the comments along the lines of, but that's not a sexist comment. I'd say it to other people too. And where do you go with that?
Yeah. So you say, look, thank you for giving me this opportunity to educate. So, you know, this is actually a great example of everyday sexism that's come out of a report by the Male Champions of Change. And these are probably, your company is one of the companies that your CEO has been a signatory of the Male Champions of Change. And to actually say, look, I'm going to be a leader here. So put what's happened to me aside, but I'm doing this for other women as well. And you've got to realize the impact on other women. So if you bring other women in and you then speak to them as one leader to another, that can change the dynamics of it. The other thing to do is go in and actually talk to HR and say, look, you know, this could be a problem for women. Could we bring in some training around this? Because there's just no awareness there, and I'm worried it's, you know, going to put other women off working in our area. And of course, all workplaces want to attract women, want them working for them. What do you think of that, Amy? Do you think that would have?
Do they? I would say, well, we don't have a HR department, and we're quite a large business as well, a large organisation. Yeah, and you know, I really see that culture starts at the top. And my role in this is I'm constantly calling people out, and I know I can almost see their eyes rolling. But
well, maybe you need to bring it in as a leader. But what do you think about talking about it? Look, you might with customers or with other stakeholders. I just want to make you aware that when you say these things, this is how it makes can make women feel. I just want to give you a heads up on that, because I'm sure you don't want to make them feel like that.
Yeah. All good suggestions, and I will take some of them on board. Absolutely.
Yes. Anybody else got another suggestion for Amy? Oh, Marta, I ask if they're distracted and therefore didn't understand what I'm saying. Right. Okay. Well, if you've got any other advice for Amy, because it sounds like that's quite hard for you, Amy. I can imagine. And I was in male environments as, you know, business journalism. It was mainly male newsrooms for a very long time. And we dealt with, you know, captains of industry who were mostly males. And, you know, it's about getting more women in around you. So try to hire more women, because that absolutely changes it. The more women there, the better. And, for, you know, as we know, for companies, the more women, the better. Oh, that's a good point from Michelle. Is there a male exec that could champion it? That's a great comment. Could you get another male on side who could help lead this with you?
Yes, possibly. They're all great suggestions.
Yeah.
Don't laugh it off.
And Mia, don't laugh it off. Yeah, good. Mia, have you had direct example of this? Because you seem pretty experienced, and you feel, it sounds like you're comfortable with not laughing it off. Can you tell us, Mia?
I also work in a mostly male-dominated environment, but the culture is slowly changing, and it's really great to work here now. And there are so many more women, and I think all the suggestions you've made so far are totally valid, and I can fully understand what it feels like to not want to speak up. And certainly there's a time and a place, but just the small acts of questioning things, or questioning why people say certain things, makes them reflect. And I found always that was the best tactic for me.
Oh dear, yes. Well, good on you, Amy. Good on you, Mia. You're fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
The preoccupation with physical appearance. So we've got your comment up here. The preoccupation with makeup is amazing. It affects your ability to be taken seriously as a professional. Gosh, that's you know, it's amazing what, and you're saying there that you're really saying there that the female leader has become a stereotype, and she wears makeup. So that's a very interesting comment to think about too, because what we are seeing is the more women in leadership, and I'm a firm believer, if we get 50% women in leadership across all politics, business, everything, we're going to have a much better world. And with that is going to become leaders in all shapes and forms and sizes, and makeup wearing and non-makeup wearing. So preoccupation with physical appearance. This was another example that was very recent. A female CEO pointed out that she appointed a woman to a key position, and this woman said, I kept being asked, will she challenge you? Does she have the ticket for the job? This astonished me, as she was a highly talented executive and she challenges me all the time, but she's small and blonde. At the end of the day, I think people were looking past her experience and assuming she wasn't capable and tough because of her look and build. I appointed her, and of course, she's doing a great job. So this, assumption about capability based on appearance as well can come into it. And of course, Hillary Clinton also got the ageism, as well as people obsessed with her looks. And Obama, when he first introduced Kamala Harris, he called her the best looking attorney general in the country. That sparked a huge debate across the US about everyday sexism, which was really good. Oh, wow, Tarlene, what a great point. Oh, my goodness. Tarlene, do you want to just pop off mute and share that with us?
Oh, yeah. So this is, I heard Katrina Wallace, who's a professor in AI ethics, or her expertise is in AI issues, and she's a thought leader in this space, mentioned it at a forum that I was at a couple of years ago. And if you put in the words unprofessional women's hairstyle in Google, and you just look at the images section of Google, it will show you women with curly hair or dreadlocks, or sort of hair that's sort of looking a little bit untamed. And she's trying to advocate for greater AI ethics, given that, women with that sort of heritage or look or genetics or whatever it might be are still professional, but Google is starting to obviously identify them as a certain cohort, and that's going to reinforce certain perceptions about women and whether they're professional or not. So, and I just literally looked it up as you were talking, and it's still the case. So those sorts of algorithms and things like that are going to be really, important for the profession to really get a handle on, so that it doesn't reinforce and retrench those, reinforce those sorts of perceptions.
Yeah, and I we know that people in companies are really concerned about this. And you know, I love the hashtag AI ethics, because there's so many examples of this. It's not just around gender, it's around race, of course, and it's hugely concerning. And also, if you look up pics, you know, free pics or things for leadership, so many men come up, and then you'll find the weirdest thing, free pics of women. So yeah, Laura's just Googled it, and it's amazing. So yes, really important that we pick up on all of that, and we kind of point that out. And also as women too, that we literally, we really kind of keep bringing it back to, let's focus on what she's saying and not how she looks. Keep conversations focused on expertise and content rather than physical appearance. And when you're introducing women as speakers at meetings, just, you know, be aware, comments about appearance can undermine credibility, right? So yes, and Marta, stock imagery that you buy for business use is typical. That's actually spot on. So there's a lot to change there, a lot to point out, and a lot you can do, particularly if you see a male introduce a female in a particular way, just pull him over, or a woman, pull them over and just say, look, we want to focus on expertise and experience here, not how she looks. It can undermine credibility. Anybody else got any good suggestions for what you could say around physical appearance, or if you have had experience yourself in dealing with it? Pop that in chat. Boris's hair. That's right. Exactly, Boris's hair. All right, so our next one, is assumptions about people and their roles, right? She'll do it. She'll do it, you know, because she's a woman, right? Or we won't ask them. We won't ask her because she's just had a baby. She won't want that role, right? Or we'll get her, and oh, I can't tell you how many senior women tell me stories about how in a meeting they've been asked if they could go and get the sandwiches, or you know, someone just shared with me the other day, she was at a photocopier, and someone said to her, oh, look, can you order some more paper for us? We've run out. And she was the new CEO of that area. So that, I think that man felt probably quite dreadful about that. But she very quickly pointed out to him what assumptions he was making about roles there. Sue, you've got a comment to share. Sue.
Hi, I had a recent consult with a voice coach because I'm about to launch into broadcast media in a radio audio capacity, and I'm a 53-year-old woman, so it's pretty scary from just being from gender disparity as well as ageism. And she gave me some really good advice, and I just wanted to share that with the rest of the group. She said, when you put yourself out into a public arena, you will be criticised, and particularly, you know, the more audience listeners you have, the more criticism you will receive. And she said, I think of it like a disco ball, and just reframe that when it comes in your own mind, in how you respond to that. And it's kind of dovetailing into what you talked about putting it back onto the person. Now, what did you mean about that? And it's also, I do that now with sexism. I reflect it back, and I think it's really important in how you deliver it, that it doesn't come across from an angry place, because our power as women, I think, is actually in our softness, and we don't have to compete with men in a patriarchal world. That our power is actually the collectiveness and how we think as women, in thinking of others and community, and not in a non-linear way, if that kind of makes sense.
I think I think when you recognize it as everyday sexism, that acts as a kind of armor to protect you from the anger, so that you're clear-headed. And of course, you might choose to, to come across in an angry way. But it might be someone that keeps offending, and you really are quite cross, because they're having a big impact. So it depends on the context. But when you know what it is, I mean, when I see it, I go, oh, great opportunity to educate, right? And so it doesn't get to me. So I think that point about protecting, because I think what you're saying too there, Sue, is if it makes us angry, then it's got through to us, it's impacting on us, and we want to protect ourselves from that. We're very busy women, really doing great things in the world, and who's got time for this, right? It's certainly not going to set us back. So having that protection in the knowledge is a fantastic way of dealing with it. But every now and again, when I was in the workplace and things happened to me, these were very tough workplaces, and I had some very tough bosses. And one of the devices I used to use was I'd let the moment pass, and then I'd wait for this particular editor to be sitting there reading the newspaper at lunch, relaxed. And then I would go in, and I like to table thumping, and I would thump the table, and I'd say, look, this is what happened the other day, and it can't happen again. And it really is a bit akin to bullying this woman, and she's very upset. And that's what would work in that situation, right? Now, look, that was probably, thinking about that now, would I do it differently? I don't know if I would. It was very effective. So, but I take your point. We don't want to let it get through to us. Tina's got a point. The last executive meeting I was in, the CEO asked for minutes to be taken. It looked at the only 2 women in the room. Oh, Tina. And Tina, how did that go down? What happened?
It didn't go down very well because we were right in the middle of actually launching a women's product. And so they should have all known better. And it was a default to look at us. And we, both my colleague and I saw it, but she wanted to pick up her pen and start writing. And I just went and slid it across the boardroom and said, no, it's not for us. Someone else can take the minutes. Always the default when you talk about people and their assumed roles. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. And look, if the person is, unsettled by it, you can always go up to them afterwards and put it in a context for them and just say, look, this is what happened here. And we're asked to do a lot of those things. And it was quite instinctive for me to do that. And then have them say, oh, I've just realized what I did. So thank you for bringing it to my attention. Right? Because that's usually the result of when you bring this up. Somebody does say, thank you for bringing that up. I now realize. I had a situation where I had a group of guys working for me, and I've got sons, so I used to call them boys. I'd say, come on, boys, let's go and have this meeting. And one day one of them said to me, could you please stop calling us boys? And I said, thank you so much for telling me. I hadn't even noticed. Thank you. I never will again. I was really grateful he told me. So that's often the response. So we can go in with that expectation that it's going to go well, and that helps us as well. Of course, recently we've had the wonderful Finnish Prime Minister judged very much on her, a night out against males. Remember Bob Hawke? It's just a great example of the double standards there. Assumptions about roles, she'll do it. Right, we do more of everything. So research shows us that we're assigned more work in the office. We do more of our work at work, right? We do more office housework, and we do double the housework at home. And for that, we get paid less than men. That is really something to have a look at. I recently just said to a woman, she was going through what she did, and she said, now I'm on 6 company boards. I said, 6? She said, oh, yes, they really like me to be on the company boards. I said, oh, well, which ones? Thinking, oh, I hope they're the influential ones. They weren't. They were the low-level housework company boards, you know, and she was a very top executive. I said to her, you're doing that, you know, pretty much at your level, you need to find out what are your 2 top influential boards and get on those and off those 6. So we always want to be finding out what are the really influential things to be doing in the office, right? And if it's office housework, let's either outsource it or find somebody else that can do it, preferably a man. So these are the ways that we can rethink and reframe. Well, let's give everyone a turn of this. Why can't we outsource? Why don't we alternate? Assumptions about roles with pregnancy. We will ask her about the role and not assume her answer. For men, I mean, we make all these assumptions about men. Why are we assuming anything about his plans? Let's ask him, right? Let's listen to what they have to say and what they want to do. So be really open about making sure we're not stereotyping people into roles. And one of the examples we were talking about just before this session started was that at schools, they assume that the woman is the prime carer, and they're not asking. This is something we can all go to our schools and say, please ask who the prime carer for the year. Or maybe you could check in once every 6 months. But some of the feedback came that the men who are doing the prime role were feeling that they weren't being valued in their role because they couldn't put themselves on the list as the person to call and the person to consult on things. So that kind of stereotyping impacts. And we also know that we have a huge issue with men not taking paternity leave in organisations, when we know they would get so much of it. Now, fortunately, we're now in a hybrid world. COVID's changed some of this. Hopefully, this might be permanent change, but let's try and really open our minds to assumptions about roles there. And then, of course, the last one we've got is assumptions that caring and careers don't mix, right? You know, how could Julia Gillard really have any comments on anything because she didn't have children, right? This was a former Prime Minister who said this, Tony Abbott, right? Shouldn't you be home with the kids? Oh, you've got 3 kids, you can't do the hours. A male, when I said I was leaving to pick up the kids, I was asked, why can't my wife do it, right? So these assumptions about caring and careers, we're in a great new reset after COVID. Let's really try and open that up. And I'd like to put this one over to you. If this has happened to you, maybe you want to pop off mute and share that with us. And also, what can we say and do when we see that? Adina, it's typical mums that are in the class WhatsApp group. I've asked my husband to be added so I don't have to do yeah, he's often one of the only, if not only men. But I think, Adina, if we open this up, right? If we, that's what's going to change it.
Totally. And that's why I made the move to add him very early in the year. And I've done that every year so that, because I mean, it adds on to the load for me when he's the one who's doing the primary work in the home. And I think it's, you know, important for other people to see that there are men who are doing this as well.
Absolutely. And I think this is something we can all raise with the schools.
Yeah.
You know, it's
they automatically set them up as just the mums when really it should be all the parents, and you can opt out if it doesn't apply to you.
Yeah. And great point too, from Michelle, what about the reserve? You know, you're single, you can stay back and do your job, right? Who knows what you've got going on in your lives? The passions you've got, the pursuits you've got, the carer responsibilities you've got, all of those things. You know, so checking in with people and asking about that is really good. Has anyone else got anything to say
It's Adina again. I've got
Yeah.
something else to say that I've been hanging on to for a bit. So I'm currently in a situation where I'm planning on how to call someone out over their remarks on everyday sexism. And often I think it really depends on the person and how I think they're going to receive the information. I hate to say that I think this person's a bit of a misogynist, and I know that me saying it to him and only me saying it, he'll just be thinking, oh, she's a hysterical woman. So there's another guy who was in the room when these comments were said, and he made a comment to me. So I've encouraged him to step up and say something, and then I'll back it up with my comments to him, not at the same time. But I think that allyship and having men call it out, and not just men, but anybody call it out, not just the person who it's happening to, because it really does depend at this stage on the personality and the viewpoints of the person who's actually carrying out those acts on how they're going to respond to it as well.
Absolutely, Adina. I think if you can get a male ally in, it's the best thing. I was doing some everyday sexism sessions with males in the Pacific, and this particular one in Papua New Guinea, I thought, look, here I am, a white woman there to lecture them. And so I asked this very experienced communications professional who was also Maori, he came along. And so I set the scene, but he'd say, listen, guys, it's like this. Imagine if, you've got the women in the room, imagine they were the dark guys. And the white guys said, all right, dark guys, morning tea, off you go and get the sandwiches. Right. So having him in this session just completely changed the dynamics and was absolutely fantastic. And there are so many men out there who would love to learn about this and lead on it, and quite frankly, be chuffed to be asked. So Vic says, agree with Michelle, when a woman doesn't have a child, it's okay to give them extra work. Well, again, you could point out, look, you're assuming this about me, but actually I've got these responsibilities there. So let's not make assumptions based on, but that also comes down to the office housework too. Mia, another couple of assumptions. My male partner always gets contacted instead of me about issues related to the house. Right, okay. Talk to him. Yes, the car yard. Oh gosh, do they need some training? All right. And Karen, you were scolded by other mums for not. Karen, do you want to tell us about that? Was that was in Australia? Karen Kim.
Yes. It was a long time ago when my kids were young, but I'm still obviously traumatized by it.
And now you wouldn't be. You're not allowed to be anymore because you've just been able to put it in the everyday sexism bucket.
Yes, but when you're a young mum, these sort of things really affect you, and you just wonder, am I a bad mum for working instead of being at all my kids' events? And that is sexism, isn't it? I mean,
totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's right. We're getting used to all sorts of roles. Some mums work, some don't, but don't assume. That's the kind of message from this. So everyday sexism is very hard to shift. It often goes unchecked, and it can be excused under, oh, well, that's our culture, or it's generation difference, or he's a good bloke, that's the way he is, or she was looking out for her, So, and, we don't want to ruffle feathers, but we know the consequences of saying nothing or doing nothing. It tells everyone it's okay, and it lends it its support. So nothing's going to stop. It leaves the individual on the receiving end to deal with it alone, right? So they're left with that thing that I described when people literally touch their hearts, right? Becomes an accepted part of workplace culture. Others are doing it. It's okay. The invisibility of the problem is akin to blaming the person, which silences them. And people then learn from a young age, well, that's the way it is, that's the Australian way, right? And as Amy pointed out, make a fuss and you'll be blamed. You know, you're a bad sport, right? You know, so, and the person internalizes it. This is just happening to me. And we saw that with that great Annabelle Crabb misrepresented documentary, where so many of the politicians actually got on and they described it drove me nuts. They would describe a perfect case of everyday sexism and they would literally go like this and lean back, right? And talked about the, now if they could say, I had an experience of everyday sexism and this is how I led, instead of internalizing it and letting it impact on them, I think they would have been a lot better off. Kay Parker says, my superintendent has poor logistics and time management skills. So whenever we do a team building day, it's always one of the women. Yeah, classic. So there, what are you going to say now, Kay Parker? What are you going to say to him next time a woman gets asked?
It's really tight, yeah, whether he should just get one of the men in the team to do it for a change.
Or let's put up a roster. Let's make a roster, share the load around, or let's allocate someone and pay them extra to do it, right? So, you know, let's take turns, right? Everybody understands let's take turns. So really important in this to conserve your energy. And I think that was to your point before about, you know, don't get angry, because we do want to protect ourselves. We want to distance ourselves from the remark, see it as an opportunity to educate. If you need to, go to HR and point out the issue and suggest training, which can be a great bonding process, right? Most of the men at that session will be saying, thank you, I now know what to do, right? Work out an approach. One woman says, okay, I see that person as the child. I'm going to put my adult hat on here and educate. And another, well, that's me, says, right, let's educate directly. And, you know, so just we'll finish off there. Lawrence says, when I was sharing my experience about sexism in a team meeting, I was told, but I don't want, by my manager, I don't want to get into a debate now. Well, that's okay. You just say, oh, that's all right. We'll take this up when the meeting finishes. You know, they might have had business to do, but, you know. So leadership communications, everyone, if you're working your way up to a leader or you're there, these are all the things that you need to be doing, and you can understand now why recognising and leading to counter everyday sexism is a key part of the leadership communications portfolio. One is so that you don't lean back and stop being visible. And then the second is to lead if you see it. So I'm going to hand over to Bobby now, who might want to, we might go back to the poll. Bobby.
Thanks, Amanda, and thank you for a fantastic webinar. I have got copious notes, and I think if we could ask everyone to just fill in this survey, the poll again, so we're just keen to see whether your views of recognising what is everyday sexism have changed at all as a result of what you've learned over the last hour. And while we're waiting for those results to come in, Amanda, I must say there's a lot of insights and great responses and wisdom in what you've put to us today. But the one I love the most is the one you ended on before, which was, when I see it, I think to myself, oh, this is an opportunity to educate. And I love that. And also, what do you mean by that? So thank you very much. For those who would like to refresh their minds about things Amanda said or spread the word, we've recorded this and it will be on our YouTube channel. And also I'd just like to reinforce that we're doing a survey at the end of this. The link will be put into the chat function, but also we will email it to you, and we would really, really appreciate your feedback. So just looking at the poll results, they are pretty consistent with where we started, although devaluing women's expertise, views and voices ranked more highly at the beginning. And assumptions about women and their roles has actually increased. So that's interesting. And the rest, I think, pretty sort of even, unless I've missed something here. So Amanda, massive thank you for your wisdom, your expertise, and particularly for your how-to. The thing about sexism often is if you think it is, it probably is.
Great way to think about it, Bobby. That's right.
Yeah, so thank you very, very much to everyone that's attended tonight. Thank you for being part of Mentor Walks and our iconic conversation series. And know that we welcome you to our events all around Australia, New Zealand and Singapore. And please know that you can come to a Mentor Walk anytime, and you can come as many times as you like. And you get to spend time with someone like Amanda, which is really quite wonderful. So thank you, everyone, and have a very good evening.